I had the pleasure of catching up with Dr. David Moody-Jones, who was head of A&E at the old East Glamorgan Hospital from 1986. And then when the Royal Glamorgan Hospital opened in 1999, he moved there as its first head of A&E, and he remained working there until 2002. In our conversation, he talks about his thoughts of how the health board is proposing to restructure the department, and he talks about how the hospital has been managed in the time when he was there. His thoughts are not always very flattering. Have a listen.
This is the big problem, in that the trust, in none of its incarnations, was ever really that interested in running an A&E department. And they only got me in 86 because otherwise the Royal College of Surgeons would have closed them down. Right. They were under threat of close down then.
Right, and because there wasn't a consultant?
Because there wasn't a consultant, yeah.
So where does this line come from now, that they say they need 10 to 13 consultants to run the department properly?
Well, you see, over the years, there have been various reports on how many consultants you need to run a department.
Yeah.
It's basically covering more of the hours of the working week. It keeps on going up. I mean, basically, you know, before, when the Royal Glamorgan opened, it should have had 3 minimum.
Yeah.
And if you want consultant presence in the hospital, you know, most of the time, you then do have to have these big numbers.
What reason did they give, do you think, for not wanting to employ a consultant or more consultants?
Well, when I was there, the main reason, when you had East Glamorgan, is the facilities weren't good enough to him, and you never would have attracted anybody. As soon as you had the Royal Glamorgan, then there was scope to attract suitable applicants. And I actually told them, you know, the year before it opened, I said, look, we can be getting ready now, and I can get this chap round to the new department and see, and people will say, oh yeah, I'd like to come here, it's nice. But they still didn't want to do it then. They held it back.
And did they say why?
People don't say why, because that would reveal their true thinking, which is always a dangerous thing to do.
And what do you think their thinking was?
Well, the thing is that at that stage, the chief executive was much more interested in elective surgery,
yeah,
and elective procedures, or probably because the way the NHS was organised and financed in those days, well, still is up to a point, there's no way that it's advantageous to run an emergency department in a trust, because you can't meet your targets, you can't make any money out of it. And it's basically not a popular thing to do. You know, if you want to be a good manager and be in with, you know, the powers that be, and get and get all your brownie points, you know, having an A&E department is very low on your list of priorities. This was the problem, is that they were never keen to run an A&E department in the first place. And then this went on for years and years, and put the minimum amount of resources into it they possibly could. And then eventually, when Margaret Foster resigned, basically they had the layer of management below had their heads and just went completely mad.
Right. And when was this? What year was this?
It would be. This would be about 2000 2009, something like that.
Right. And when did you
Perhaps,
retire?
no, perhaps a bit before.
Right. And when was it you retired?
Well, I retired now, it's nearly 9 years ago.
Right.
Basically, I got to 59 and a half, and I'd had enough. And I couldn't stick it anymore.
Right.
Because they were starting to close the place around me, which I found very difficult.
Mm. The line that Dr. Nick Lyons and and the rest of the board are giving for the problems with the unit is that it's very difficult to recruit enough consultants, and there's a shortage of consultants everywhere. Do you accept that line?
Well, yes, up to a point, but the main thing, the reason why it's difficult to recruit is because the word on the street was that it's going to close down. And if you say a place is going to close down, you're not going to recruit.
Yeah, yeah.
So in fact, the main problem was saying that the place had no long-term future going back many years ago. And it was clear that it was under threat right the way back, more than 10 years ago. So you're not going to get anybody coming, and they didn't actually try. When I retired, I gave over a year's notice. I said the last 2 months, I said I would like to go part-time.
Yeah.
And they said, and so I wrote this letter. 14 months later, I wrote a reminder, and I then got a reply which said, no, you can't go part-time before you retire. To which I sent back a copy of their own retirement policy with a paragraph saying that part-time work should be encouraged before they retired to them. And they said, all right then. And I said, I'd like to do so much. And they said, oh no, that's too much. You can do so much. And I said, well, I tell you what, I'll do what I want to do. And then you put my replacement in, and I'll go down to less. And they didn't even bother to advertise for a replacement till after I'd left. So they were not trying, absolutely not trying whatsoever in any way.
At the one of the public meetings that I went to, Marcus Longley said that he admitted that they hadn't tried for many years to recruit, and he said that the NHS has been rubbish at its labour force planning, which is quite an astounding thing to say, isn't it?
It is. It's actually true. The NHS has always been bad at labour force planning. Why on earth is beyond me. Because the fact that we needed more A&E consultants was their reports going back over 20 years, and they did increase recruitment of training grades in Wales, but never enough.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, you do recruit people from England, but the trouble is, as soon as there's a better job nearer their homes turn up, they bugger off again. We've lost a few people like that. So it is a problem, but it doesn't help that you don't actually try.
Yeah. And what do you think of their recruitment efforts now? Would you class it as satisfactory?
Well, I mean, I didn't rate the advert as being very good as an advert. They weren't actually giving all the relevant information, or, to my mind, trying hard enough. But I'm very gratified they have recruited people.
Yeah, they have recruited a consultant, haven't they?
And local people as well.
Yeah. What do you think the advert should have said that it didn't say?
Well, I think it should have had a lot more detail, and I think it should also, in view of the previous failure to recruit people, the rules are that you then advertise it as at a higher pay grade. You know, if a vacancy is not filled the first time, the second time you advertise it at a higher pay grade, which is standard procedure, which they didn't do. So in a way that implies that it hadn't been advertised before, but they said it had. So I don't know. It all doesn't fit together, basically.
Do you think it smells of them having made up their mind beforehand that they were going to make a reduction and were going through the motions?
I think that's a reasonable interpretation. The other trouble, you know, the thing is that all the jobs are for the group, you see, not for the individual hospital. So you don't know, you know, reading the advert and the job description, you wouldn't actually know how much of your time would be physically spent in the Royal Glamorgan, you see.
Yes.
You know, you could say, well, you're just covering it weekends or out of hours, or you're just doing a couple of sessions there a week or something, and you wouldn't really know. So it's not a specific. It wasn't a specific advert for the Royal Glamorgan. You know, it's an advert for the group. So they can't say it's an advert for the Royal Glamorgan. It's just to bump up the group.
Yeah, and I think their argument for doing that was that it adds more flexibility and they can move people around between the three hospitals.
Yeah, I mean that's a good argument in a way, and it also gets rid of the problem of people not wanting to apply for a job in a hospital that's probably going to cease to exist. So in a way, I see that point. But it also does make it easier for them to downgrade it, you know, without breaking any contracts or anything.
Do you think there's a risk that the whole hospital will close? You know, if the A&E department does go, is that a consequence?
You've always got a risk of losing services. The problem that we had historically was that if the hospital didn't have an A&E department, the Royal College of Surgeons would have removed training recognition for sort of all the jobs, you know, in the whole hospital.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't see the full range of work. So I don't know what that would happen now, because they've lost a lot of recognition for various jobs anyway. But it's difficult because A&E are becoming more centralised, and there's certain things that really should only be going to major centres.
Yeah.
But you know, there is a certain level of service that you should be able to provide at a major district general hospital.
Yeah.
But if you go back historically, the great problem was with the Royal Glamorgan was that it was not built to be big enough to do what it was meant to do. Because the original consultant's report, when they're talking about building it, was to do all the functions there, you'd need 700 beds. And, you know, and it only had 500 and something. It was always at the lower end of the range to be viable, you know, from the day it was opened.
Right. So do you think that calls into question the feasibility of an A&E department staying open 24/7?
Well, in a way it does, because you haven't got the rest of the hospital. It has got limitations. You know, it's like the paediatrics being cut down, for example. And certain things have got to go through and not go to the now, because heart attacks will have to go through to the main centre eventually, when all the operative interventions are sorted out. We could have, you know, when I was there, we could treat strokes because we had a very good setup with Dr. Dewar and telemedicine and all these things. But of course, then with the stroke unit being moved up to Merthyr, that went. So gradually over the years, things have been cut down.
what future would you see for the hospital? You know, if there were investments to be made, what potentials do you see?
Well, I think you could run a sort of quite respectable emergency department there, 24/7, with the gesture you wouldn't be able to take certain things in. Well, heart attacks, because they would have to go to somewhere that could do angiograms, to put balloons in, so you couldn't do those. It'd be difficult to do strokes, but then no hospital other than major centres should be doing heart attacks and strokes anyway. I don't know what the orthopaedic system is now to do significant trauma. I don't know what they've got, whether they could do that, but they could do bread and butter stuff, you know.
So even if you precluded those two areas, strokes and heart attacks, you could still run a 24-hour emergency department.
Yeah, I don't see why not. You see, the trouble is that basically no district general hospital in the country is really going to be taking strokes and heart attacks for much longer. You know, in London, that's been gone for years, because you've got enough centres that can offer the specialised treatment for them. So the fact that the Royal Glamorgan can't do it doesn't mean a thing, because no other hospital can do it as well.
Where is the nearest centre to here for strokes and heart attacks?
Well, heart attacks should be Cardiff or Swansea,
right?
Morriston, you know. Strokes, Merthyr will do strokes, you know, and Dr. Dewar does them very well. The trouble is that there are a few things now that are not going to come to any emergency department. They're going more centralised, mainly heart attacks and strokes, and also major trauma. So theoretically, the major trauma should go to Cardiff, because they've got the facilities for it.
So in your view, how many A&E consultants does it need to run that department, in your view?
Ooh, it depends on the cross cover. If you're going to cross cover, which they will presumably at night, I don't know what the actual very latest is, but really you'd be talking. I think to do it properly, you need 4 to 5. That would be minimum.
Right.
And then you could cross cover out of hours, you see.
Yeah, and they would need to be permanent consultants then, not locums.
Well, locums is silly because that you never get. If you need people to plan long term. You need people to do the teaching, to do the protocols, to get things organised. And locums are good for doing the day-to-day work, but you won't get them to do anything long term, anything strategic. So I think.
And there is a suggestion that locums come and go as it suits them.
Well, yeah. So that's it. They get paid. They get paid extra for it. But and you can be flexible. But if you want to make the place look respectable, you've got to have full-time staff really, and organise it nicely. So it's fair and well to have but locums are only meant to be short-term. You shouldn't be able to run a place with locums for years on end, which is what they've done, which is madness.
And I think they would probably argue that this is why they're needing to make changes, because you can't carry on running on locums. No,
and to get themselves into this mess is crazy. Really, it goes back that They've just lost so many opportunities to employ people when they could have. Basically because I don't think that the heart has ever been in running a long-term emergency department. When Alison Williams was appointed, the last chief executive who was sacked.
Yeah.
She was very good, and I got her in the department. I had her for 20 minutes, and I told her everything that needed to be done. And she sat there and listened to it all, didn't interrupt me once, went away, did none of it. Absolutely nothing. But, it was all spelled out, what needed to be done, following all the national procedures and everything. So there's just no interest.
So there's a new chief executive due to take over. We don't know who it's going to be yet. What advice would you give to him or her?
Well, I think he's got to decide whether he wants to run an acute general hospital. Really, this is what it is. I mean, this is what it is meant to be. If he wants to run an elective surgery factory or a diagnostic testing hub, he should better off the private sector. That's not what the NHS does. We're meant to be treating sick people. That's what it's for.
Mm.
And I think the trouble is I always feel silly saying this because people don't the management has always viewed emergencies and sick people as a problem in hospitals. They're not the reason the hospital is there. They get in the way of running a nice, clean, tidy hospital and getting a good throughput and meeting all your targets, And I think you need somebody who's interested in running a good acute service for the local people, not just in meeting all the targets and looking good and getting their performance related pay. That's what you need.
That is the problem now, that it's run too much along the lines of targets and performance.
Well, I don't know now. It was a bit when I was there. I was used to get in trouble because I wouldn't fiddle the figures to get in to meet the targets.
Were you asked to fiddle the figures?
Oh yeah, everybody's asked to fiddle the figures.
Who asks you to do that?
Oh, management, of course. They always they don't call it fiddle the figures. The worst they call it being flexible or gaming. But it's no secret, that I was asked to do some things that I thought were absolutely ridiculous, and I refused.
Like what? What sort of things were you asked to do?
Well, reallocating an area of the corridor as a treatment, as a ward, so that we could say we put people in a bed. That was about the most egregious one, I think. There were a few things.
Does that still happen now? Do you know?
I wouldn't know. I think I wouldn't. No idea. I would think now the figure, it's so bad they couldn't fiddle them now. There's so many people waiting about in corridors. It's and I do go to the hospital occasionally, and there's people queuing in corridors and ambulances outside every time I go. It used to be an exception.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think people have given up trying to catch the figures. It can't be done.
But many people who've joined the campaign have expressed their fears that if the A&E department is downgraded or closed as an A&E department, that people will die and that it will be more than just an inconvenience of having to travel a bit further. Would you share those concerns?
Well, I would, basically, because it's not as if there is spare capacity anywhere else. Because if you look at the problems in the university in Cardiff, in UHW, and the amount of ambulances outside the time, you're not going to say that you're going to travel longer, and you're going to get treated no quicker when you get there. I don't think if you make the point that you take 5 minutes longer in the ambulance, you get treated 5 minutes quicker. Well, that's fine, but that doesn't occur because the other places are all over capacity as well. So I think it's you can't. It's difficult to say. You can't often put your finger on one individual and say this person has died because of that. But statistically, I'm sure that would occur. And it's an awful long way up to say from the Royal Glam up to Merthyr. It's a lot longer than they think it is, particularly with adverse weather. And the traffic down to Cardiff is not good either. So I would be worried personally. I took up my post when I used to do a lot with the ambulance service. I was the founding director of their paramedic program, the Mid Glamorgan ambulance when it existed, and so I drove up once all the way up through the Rhondda Bach up to Merthyr, through Aberdare and all those ways, just to see how long it took. And round through all those roads round the top. So I actually knew, and that was not in adverse weather conditions. It took bloody long time anyway.
Yeah.
I just wonder if people have a grasp of reality sometimes.
So with the board meeting now on the 29th of June, we've been given to understand that there will be a recommendation of on the way forward, and there are 3 options that they're considering for the unit. What is your view of the campaign's aim of trying to retain the unit as a 24-hour consultant-led permanent unit? Is it realistic?
I think it's realistic as long as people appreciate that it can't do everything. Some things will have to go, and that's for very sound medical reasons. But there's no reason why quite a lot of things couldn't be done there. Quite a lot of the trauma that wasn't serious could be done there. A lot of the medical illnesses, the chest infections, stuff like that, could be done. So I think it's quite a reasonable aim. But you couldn't do everything. But you could do sort of 85-90% of the stuff that would come through the door now.
Right. Probably. And the stuff that you can't do would be things like heart attacks and strokes.
Yes, but you see, what we've done over the years is a lot to do with that. With the ambulance service with the paramedic program, to do a lot of treatments and assessments before, so they could pick these people up. There are all these things, the fast tests for strokes, and they can do the ECGs for heart attacks and send them through to the hospital directly. So I think that could cover a lot of it. But I think if you end up putting every single person who goes in an ambulance down to Cardiff and whatever, the place will be even worse than it is now. Won't work.
Right. Are there any other thoughts you have on this whole business?
No, it's just overwhelming sadness, really. That it's just been a story of the management not wanting to run a full sort of acute, well, an A&E department at all, historically, you know. And it's just when I was there, it was a struggle, you know. It was a struggle every. I think I got a bit fed up with it. Well, I got burnt out in the end, probably. Didn't help nearly dying in 2002. I mean, then it gives you a sense of proportion. You know, you realise then, well, what's the point? You know, might as well just enjoy it. Sorry.
What happened to you then?
Oh, I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage and was unconscious for a month and paralysed down one leg for 3 months, and took 5 months to get back to work, and ended up thinking, well, I would actually say some expletives here if it wasn't recorded, because my brain damage means that I do. But I thought, well, what the hell, you know? I mean, I'm not going to let this destroy me.
No.
So that sort of didn't help.
Were you treated in your own hospital?
No, of course not. I'd be dead. I couldn't have done it there. No. I was treated extremely well in France. I was on holiday in France, and I had state-of-the-art treatment and private aeroplane home, and rehabilitated in Rookwood. And after a short episode in the University Hospital Wales, where they nearly killed me, I wasn't very impressed with the neurosurgery there, and ended up sort of making a reasonable recovery. But it's amazing, isn't it? You know, you have your consultant. I really realised this afterwards. You know, there I was, off duty, you know, 5 months, seriously ill, considerable chance of not getting back to work. You know, about 20% chance of not getting back, and they didn't even bother to put a locum in for me. I think that sums up the whole bloody attitude of the place. You know,
in that whole time you were off, they didn't replace you.
No, well, not well. They had the associate specialist acting up, you know, but they didn't actually want to spend the money to actually bring somebody in, and that's the level of concern for the emergency department that there's always been.
Yeah. Would you have a message for Mark Drakeford? You know, if the health board decides to press ahead and reduce the unit, or maybe even reduce it to a minor injuries unit, I think we would then be going back to the Welsh Government. Would you have a message for Mark Drakeford or Vaughan Gething?
Then he ought to get the coalitions to decide, you know, because I think the management of the trust basically have proved themselves incapable of deciding over many years. So I think if he really wants to do something, perhaps he should get an independent people from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine or to advise on it, because I don't think I would have no confidence really that the management would come to a reasonable decision, because it would seem out of character.
Yeah. Great.
Anyway, good to speak to you.
Likewise. Thank you ever so much.